of the month of Elul. We are a day away from Yom Hadin, from Rosh Hashanah, and it's a big zchus to be able to learn a little bit together as we are getting closer and closer to Rosh Hashanah. We only have one Amud left until the Yom Hadin. So a big shukach to everybody for chapping a little bit of time to make sure that we are keeping up with Limud Torah. And let me send the link out so that Chevra can follow along here. There we go. We are on Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph of Maseches Pesachim, where the Gemara is discussing the halachas of whether or not the Gemara was trying to discuss within the Brisa whether somebody that has intentionally violated the Isra of Me'ilah would be chayv karban, and the Brisa had concluded that you would not be chayv karban, even though b'shogeg you would be chayv karban. Why? Because Me'ilah carries with it a chiyuv misa b'dei shemaim. And the Gemara wanted to know at the end of Lamed Beis, Amud Beis, the Gemara asked the question, the last four words on the line, Man Shamas Lei, whose opinion is it? The Amar Hasid b'Me'ilah, that if you violated the Isra Me'ilah b'Misa, that you be chayev Misa b'dei Shamayim. Says the Gemara, Rebbe, this is the opinion of none other than Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. The Tanya, we have a brayso as follows: Hasid b'Me'ilah, if you violated Me'ilah intentionally, Rabbi says b'Misa, that you have chiyuv Misa. Obviously, that would be Misa b'dei Shamayim. But the Chachamim say be'azhara. This is azhara, means an Isur lav. You get malchus for it. But the technicality is here, it is a azhara because what the Torah is doing is it is warning you. There's an Isser here that is warned, and therefore you are chayev malchus for that. Says the Gemara, my time with the Rebbe, what is the rationale behind Rebbe's opinion? Why does he say that you are chayev misa b'dei shemaim? Amar Rabbi Abahu argues as follows. Where did Rebbe learn this from? Gamar, he's learning it as a Gzera Shava, chet mitruma. He's learning it from the Gzera Shava of chet from the Isser of Truma. What exactly is are these two psukim? So the pasuk says, with regards to truma, says the Gemara, nefesh kisim al mal v'chat'a bishkaga. If you violated me'ilah v'chat'a bishkaga, mikol she'Hashem v'hevi'is Hashemai la'Hashem el tamim min atzen be'eklecha kesef shkalim v'shegel ha'kedesh la'Hashem. So what's the issur? Nefesh kisim al mal v'chat'a, and the pasuk says, V'shamru es mishmarti v'lo yisu alav chet u'meisu bay ki yichalalu ani Hashem mekadeschem. Those are the two psukim that indicate that there is the word chet is repeated in the pasuk. Says Rabbi Abahu, that is where Rabbi Yehuda Anasi is learning this din from. He's learning it chet from the Isur of Achilas Truma. Pasuk says chet with Truma, and the pasuk says chet with regards to Me'ilah. Both of them, says Rabbi Abahu, according to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, are going to carry the here you go. I'm going to carry the Isur of Me'ilah of Misa. Says the Gemara, 5 lines down from the top of Lamed Gimel Aleph, says up Me'ilah b'Misa. You're also going to have an Isur of Chiv Misa by Me'ilah. Umina, and from the Gezerah Shava, you also learn my Truma b'Kazais, Af Me'ilah b'Kazais. Since Truma is din by Kazais, we're going to apply the same din as well. Me'ilah is also you're only over with the Kazais. And that, it says Rabbi Abahu, is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's opinion. Papa disagrees. He attacks him. He says, who says that Rabbi holds back to the Rabbanan that Me'ilah is determined by the quantity, which we discussed yesterday, quantity being a kazais? Maybe he holds maybe he holds like the opinion of Abba Shol. The Amar Yesh Shavat Pruta, that it's all a question about whether or not it's Shavat Pruta. It's a question about the damim. It's a question about the value of it that needs to be remunerated, not the volume that needs to be compensated. Says the Gemara, Afal Gav the Leisbe Kazais, even if it doesn't have a Kazais, if it's a Shavat Pruta, according to Abba Shol, then you should be chayiv as well. Says the Gemara, "V'hara of Papa who didn't Rav Papa himself say to Abba Shol Tartibai that Abba Shol requires both." No, you have to conclude that Rav Papa himself, we had mentioned this already yesterday, that Rav Papa had retracted from his original opinion. He did not think that there are two. That Abba Shol requires both. That he needs both a pruta and a kazais. He holds. Rav Papa holds now that Abba Shol only requires a pruta. He does not require kazais. Continues the Gemara as follows: Mar berei de Ravina Amar. Mar berei de Ravna Ravina Amar. He says as follows: Hachikam. The brisa that we had discussed yesterday, that made the argument that Me'ila should not be chayev a karban. So we had seen maybe one rationale, which the Gemara had asked and answered about, is maybe that goes according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, who told us that Me'ila you chayev misa, and therefore, since you are chayev misa by Me'ila, that's why you can't make a chavachomer, and that is why you know that that Me'ila b'meiza will not get a karban. But there's another way of understanding it. It says the Gemara as follows: Hachikamra. This is what you're going to say. Look, not true. Im amar b'shar mitzvahs. You can make the argument as follows: with shar mitzvahs, with all other mitzvahs, shaloi asa bahen, shaloi asa bahen. When the Torah did not make it so, she'ein miskaven k'miskaven, to equate somebody that did it she'ein miskaven without kavana to do this action, k'miskaven, like somebody that did intend to do this action. What's the example? Says the Gemara: a person on Shabbos intended to cut something that was detached from the ground. Meaning, he's walking through his field and he sees that there is an apple on the ground, and or let's say something that more reasonable. There's a watermelon that is growing out of the ground, but it's not growing out of the ground. It's talish. It's already disconnected. He cut it yesterday. Now what he wants to do is just wants to cut the stem off. Wants to cut the stem, and then he's going to take the watermelon. He already cut it yesterday. He just didn't take it inside yet. But instead, he was planning on picking up the watermelon that he cut yesterday, that he just connected yesterday. But then he accidentally cut the thing that he didn't cut yesterday. This is still attached, meaning he just did katsira. He just harvested his watermelon on Shabbos morning. Says the Gemara, shepater. You would be pater in such a situation. Why? Because it's miskaven. Meaning he was planning on not violating Shabbos, and he accidentally violated Shabbos. He was planning on doing the action, but he didn't. He ended up doing a different action with a different item. Says the Gemara, you'd be pater in such a case. Tell me, but Me'ila is not like that. She'im niskaven lehischamim. If a person intended to warm himself up with chulin wool, and accidentally warmed himself up with ola wool, meaning wool that came from the korban ola, shemal, he has violated me'ila, meaning me'ila does not require you to have kavana. You could violate me'ila even shaloi kavana, and that would be a chumrah that me'ila has over all other isurim, and therefore you cannot learn a gzera shava from any other issue to Me'ila, and therefore Me'ila is going to be left with you're not going to be chayiv a korban there, because we don't know what the kal and what the chamer is. You can't learn anything to Me'ila. Says the Gemara, we have an additional way of understanding why it would be that Me'ila is different from everything else. Rav Nachman Yitzchak tells us, this is what we're talking about. Look, not true. Im amar bishar mitzvahs, with regards to other mitzvahs, shekein lo chayiv bahem she'ein misasik. With all other mitzvahs, we do not treat misasik like somebody that is not misasik. Meaning, misasik means when you do an activity not by planning on doing one activity and then you accidentally did another activity. When you didn't plan on doing the activity at all, for example, you planned on lifting up the watermelon. You weren't planning on cutting anything. You were planning on lifting up the watermelon. And then the knife that was in your hand, when you were planning on lifting up the watermelon, it accidentally cut something that was attached to the ground. That you should be pater. Me'ila is even chomer in such a case. yodel kli litol chevet. So you're planning on sticking your hand into a vessel to pull out one object. V'sach yodel b'shemen shel kodesh, and in that vessel there happened to be some shemen of kodesh, Beis Hamikdash owned oil. Shemal, you have violated mi'ila, because at the end of the day, you got benefit from mi'ila, and it doesn't make a difference whether it was your intention or whether it was even your intention. If you knew that it was happening, you've still violated mi'ila, and you are chayv mi'ila. You cannot learn anything to mi'ila, because mi'ila is chomer in these two ways more than anything else. Says the Gemara, Amar Mar, the Amoraim said as follows: Bameh dvarim amurim. Where do you say such a thing? What's the such a thing? Yeah, Bameh dvarim amurim means the Rashi, 3 lines from where the lines get very, very wide. Amar Mar Bameh dvarim amurim. Which dvarim are we talking about? Kamar. Afil leman de shari hanas chametz bepesach. Kamar. We're talking even with regards to somebody that holds that chametz on Pesach is mutbar or not, which is the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Where these words said that the chametz of truma has the kedusha of truma, meaning we treat it like truma. Where do we say such a thing? That we even get into the discussion that truma's chametz is something that we consider to be truma. Says the Gemara, mafresh truma ve'echmitza, when you took off the truma and then it became chametz. Aval hifresh chametz truma, but if it became chametz before you took off the truma, divrei kol ena kedosha, everybody agrees that there is no kedusha to even talk about that. Says the Gemara, how do you know such a thing? How do you know that chametz truma is only once it became chametz? Once it became chametz already, and then you took off truma, then everybody agrees that there's nothing to talk about. But if it was done beforehand, that's where we have the whole discussion of whether chametz truma you are chayv for, and what you have to chayv with. It's pruta, or whether it is the share of a kazais. Where's this whole discussion from? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak says as follows: Amar Kra Zog the Torah. Torah tells us Titein Loi. With regards to giving something to the Kohen, the pasuk says Titein Loi. You have to give to him. You have to give to him. That's Degancha Tirishcha Yitzarecha. You have to give to him Titein Loi. But not to his burning, meaning he has to be able to use it for eating. So titein lo, it has to be given to him, not to his fire. Maseches Rav Huna bereider Rabbi Yeshua, says Rav Huna the son of Rabbi Yeshua, ein tarmim minat mea l'ta'ira. You are not allowed to be tarem, meaning to take truma min hatmea l'ta'ira. The halacha is that if you have a number of different bundles of grain, so the din is that you can be turim from one to another. You can say this section of this truma is truma for this whole these 10 piles here. I'm taking X percentage of this, and this is going to cover everything. But the halacha is that you cannot include truma tamea with truma tahara and say, I'm gonna be turim the minat tamea tahara from the truma that's tameh, and that'll cover me for the truma that's tahara. But if you accidentally did do so, what's the halacha? Truma or truma? It works. Meaning, lechatchila, you're not allowed to do this, but it does work. V'amai, how could it work? Lema loy v'loy le'ura. But the pasuk tells me, according to what you, Rav Nachman Yitzchak, just told me, is that you have a pasuk that says loy, that you give it to the kohen, but not to his fire. How could it be that this would even be mutar b'di'evet, that it works? That this is chalos of truma, that truma now exists, even though it was on truma tameh. That seems to be against your limit in the pasuk. Says the Gemara lo kasha. No, I have an answer. No, not a problem. Hasam haisa lo shasa kosher. There, with the truma tameh, it did have a moment that it was kosher, meaning fundamentally it was able to be truma. So it does fulfill the basic requirement of titein lo. It did at one point in time have an obligation to be given to the kohen. Says, in such a case, the chametz that became the truma that became chametz on Pesach before you remove the truma, Yeah, there was never a time that it was ever fitting to give the kohen. Says the Gemara, what do you mean that there was never a time that it was fitting to give to the kohen? You mix the flour and the water, now it turns into dough. Now it's right to be given to the kohen. So says the Gemara, no, we're talking about a situation that it was chametz, it became chametz while it was still attached to the ground. That's a very, as I say in Yiddish, far-fetched, right? That's a crazy akimta, that you're going to have a situation that the whole Brisa is talking about a case that all the Tanaim are agreeing that in such a case, that's what we're not talking about, right? That the achmetz b'mechubar, aval achmetz b'talish. But if everybody agrees that it became chametz when it was detached from the ground, hachinami de kacha. Everybody agrees that it became kaddish, and now you have a discussion. Amalei, so Nachman Yitzchak says back to him, yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And he quotes the pasuk in the Sefer Daniel that is peculiar. He says in Chami, this is peculiar. Rashi tells us Mikrahu b'Daniel. I suppose Rashi assumes that not everybody knows all of Tanakh, although it's a dead giveaway because the pasuk is in Aramaic. Says the pasuk B'Gzeras Irin Pisgama, that the sentence, that the Gzera, the sentencing, is by the decree of the angels. Ma'amar Kedishin She'ilta, and it is it's a statement, and it's a question that is posed by the Kedishin, by the Malachei Hasharis. V'chein marim b'bei midrasha kavasi, and he says, and in the Beis Medrash they say exactly like me. They said that this is exactly what is going on. Rashi says marim means marim hara kavasi, exactly like me. And then the Gemara addresses Ki Asar Rav Huna b'rei the Rav Yeshua, when Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yeshua, arrived. Amar, going on to Lamed Gimel Beis, Amar, he said, Amar the pasuk says, Reishis, the Gancha, the first of your grain, Sheshaira, and currently Yisrael, that remains recognizable to the meaning that remains recognizable in that it is mutter to Yisrael. Yatzazu she'ein she'ara nikarim, that excludes something whose remains are not recognizable. Meaning, once it's chametz, it becomes osir for even a Yisrael. And Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we will continue with this discussion on this din tomorrow, probably after Shachris. And everybody should have a beautiful day, a beautiful evening. Get some sleep. Shachris and Slichas very early tomorrow morning. Tov.